can't do this.
Never, and then I thought, that's unfair.
Because how dare you? I told him to go fly a kite.
Like it's immediately a well-paying job. It's not. You have to kind of show your loyalty too.
Mind you, this is like this Disney, not even really Disney, it's just the penny pinchers, the accountants.
We're done. That's not a rumor, not a headline twist at all. That's the exact message Marvel's biggest stars just delivered to Disney. Can you believe the real heroes of Disney just walked away, and they're not coming back? Why? Because after years of being underpaid, silenced, and used up, Jeremy Renner, Scarlett Johansson, Chris Evans, and Elizabeth Olsen finally snapped. And honestly, this isn't a meltdown. This is a full-blown rebellion, triggered by betrayal and aimed at Disney that claimed to own them. But let's talk about the moment everything snapped.
How much of you is titanium right now?
Well, this is metal. This right here.
Your leg is metal.
Yeah, half my face is metal. All the right side of my back is metal. The ribs, yeah, there was 14 breaks in the ribs. You see like your eye, it's like with your other eye, it's because my eyeball was out.
Jeremy Renner had just survived a snowplow accident that crushed his body and nearly ended his life. The man was in a wheelchair, barely holding it together, and Disney showed up. Not with support, not with a thank you, but with a contract. A cold, calculated contract offering him half the pay he made on Hawkeye Season 1. Half.
They asked me to do a season 2, and they offered me half the money.
Why? Because according to them, the character was already established and budgets were tight. In short, they said, "You're not worth it anymore." And just when you thought it couldn't get more disrespectful, Renner dropped the real punchline. Did you think I'm only half the Jeremy because I got ran over?
Why? Did you think I'm only half the Jeremy because I got ran over?
That wasn't sarcasm. That was his response to being offered exactly half of what he made for Hawkeye Season 1. Half the pay after nearly dying.
Marvel, mind you, this is like this Disney, not even really Disney, it's just the penny pinchers, the accountants. I told him to go fly a kite.
And Renner? He didn't sugarcoat it. He looked them dead in the eye and said, "Go fly a kite." Believe me, that was the line Disney never recovered from. Because if they thought they could devalue a man who nearly died protecting his family, they seriously misjudged who they were dealing with.
Sorry? Typically, if a series does well and you are trying to get the star back for the next season, you're not asking them to take a 50% pay cut. I mean, keep listening, but tell me if this makes any sense to you.
Fans on Reddit and across social media lit up the comment sections, not in disbelief, but in full support. This wasn't some dramatic headline. It was the moment people realized Disney wasn't just underpaying its stars, it was actively devaluing them. And that's when the rebellion really started. Not quietly, not behind closed doors, but publicly, and with Jeremy Renner leading the charge. Now Disney probably assumed this was over, that Jeremy Renner turned down the deal and they could quietly move on. But what they didn't realize was that while Renner was learning how to walk again and battling through the trauma of a near-fatal accident, he was also doing something else entirely. He was making calls, not to producers or lawyers, but to the people who had walked the same tightrope, his former Marvel co-stars. What started as friendly check-ins quickly turned into serious conversations. Not about fame or roles, but about how it really felt working under Disney's control. Chris Evans, long seen as Marvel's golden boy, quietly admitted he'd been offered a blink and you'll miss it cameo, with a paycheck so low it didn't even justify the flight to set. Scarlett Johansson, still furious over the way Disney tried to cut her out of Black Widow's streaming profits, revealed she never received a real apology. Not from the executives who signed the deal, and not from the studio she carried for over a decade. And Elizabeth Olsen, who had given Marvel some of its most emotionally complex performances, opened up about how her character was reduced to grief, trauma, and chaos, without any real development, and without any concern for what that took out of her personally. And these weren't just gripes about salary, this was emotional damage. Years of being overworked, overlooked, and legally muzzled under contracts that told them to smile and stay silent.
Let me just say this, like every other Marvel movie, it doesn't end well for the superheroes.
And right in the middle of it all, Jeremy Renner, the guy Disney tried to cut in half, literally and financially, was now the one bringing everyone together. And this marked the start of their rebellion. They weren't just venting anymore. They were done with Disney and ready to build something of their own. So they decided not to go back to renegotiate, but they took the risk, broke the silence and chose to build something new, something they could actually control. And the first call? It wasn't to Marvel. It was straight to Amazon. And the good thing, Amazon didn't waste a second. They weren't trying to hire Jeremy Renner as another face for a franchise. They wanted him as a partner, with creative control, full ownership, and the freedom to tell his own story without compromise. And the offer on the table? A $120 million streaming deal that would change the industry.
When you got involved in the Disney funnel, was that a weird coincidence? Because I read somewhere you only did that because you were about to become homeless and you needed money.
But the real game changer wasn't the money or the story. It was one single clause buried deep in the contract, the Echo Mandate. That clause guaranteed something Disney had always denied them, a voice. It removed the NDAs, the silence clauses, the legal traps that punished actors for speaking out. Under the Echo Mandate, no actor could be forced into silence again. And Renner made sure it applied to more than just himself, because this wasn't a solo move. He brought others with him, Scarlett Johansson, Elizabeth Olsen, and Chris Evans. Not as supporting roles, but as partners. They weren't signing on to play characters. They were signing on to build something new, something Disney never gave them, ownership. And just like that, Disney's worst nightmare became reality. Their original stars weren't just walking away, they were taking their power with them. Disney didn't realize the storm had already been building behind closed doors for months. They believed they were dealing with a few isolated frustrations, maybe some ego bruises, maybe some old contract drama. But what they were actually facing was a coordinated rebellion that had been quietly building strength while they were too busy managing press tours and budgeting sequels. And then, the moment everything shattered, the leak. An anonymous Google Drive link, no password, no warning, just dropped straight into the inboxes of 3 major entertainment reporters. 2 of them were actively working with Disney's press team. The file contained unedited footage, Jeremy Renner, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, and Elizabeth Olsen sitting face to camera, not as actors, but as insiders exposing the reality behind the Marvel curtain. And just when the emotion peaked, the final frame hit the screen like a sledgehammer. Phase 5. What comes after the mouse? That wasn't a teaser for a new franchise. It was a direct hit to Marvel's branding, a full-throated message to Disney that the original stars weren't just done. They were moving on, and they were taking their legacy with them. The word phase had always belonged to Marvel's film rollout, but now it meant something else entirely. Identity, truth, image, power, and none of it was under Disney's control anymore. Inside the studio walls, everything went into freefall. Executives called last-minute meetings, legal teams reviewed contracts in panic, PR staff rushed to find the right narrative, hoping to spin the situation as a minor misunderstanding or a natural creative evolution. They even drafted fresh retention bonuses for stars who hadn't appeared on screen in years, hoping money would fix what silence had already broken. But they were months too late, because what no one at the top seemed to notice was the real deadline. Not the release date of the next Marvel film, but the expiration of their most powerful tool, the silence clauses. On December 31st, 2023, dozens of those legal traps, non-disclosure agreements, non-disparagement clauses, and financial penalties for speaking out quietly expired. And when the clock struck midnight, so did Disney's hold over the very people who made their billion-dollar universe possible. And from that moment forward, nothing was off limits. And the people who had carried the weight of the franchise on their backs, they were finally ready to speak, not in interviews, not in press tours, but in their own words, on their own terms. No sugarcoating. As Disney scrambled to contain the fallout, the stars weren't just walking away, they were building something bigger. Scarlett Johansson answered with Prototype, a revenge scripted series aimed at Hollywood exploitation, and insiders say it's a not-so-subtle shot at Disney's top brass. Meanwhile, Elizabeth Olsen made her exit quietly but powerfully, sending a final message. I gave you my face, my time, and my trust. I'm keeping my voice. That one line echoed through the halls of Disney like a closing door. She wasn't asking for a raise. She wasn't threatening to sue. She was simply done and already signed with Amazon. This isn't just stars leaving a studio. It's the original Marvels staging a full-blown revolt against the empire they once built. The Marvels gave Disney everything: their faces, their bodies, their silence. And when it came time for loyalty to go both ways, Disney offered half a paycheck and a gag order. So now they're done. Not with silence, not with apologies, but with cameras rolling, contracts ripped up, and a brand new empire already in motion. One that no longer answers to Disney, but to the very stars who made it a global phenomenon in the first place. Now the Marvels left the Disney with power, purpose, clarity, and plan. And this time, they're not turning around. When they said, "We're done," it wasn't a catchphrase. It was a promise, and they meant every single word. But here's the real question. If Marvel's biggest stars are done with the mouse, how long before the fans follow? Hit subscribe. Before the next truth leaks and they scramble to cover it up,